What's up? We are back on the 51 Hudson. Day 4 of the build. Not full days, but it's the 4th day of touching this car. And the rails are now straight. So that's that. And I'll box them on the inside once I get the front end set up in there. And see what it all looks like. This is what I'm working with next. This is the front suspension out of a, I think it was an 84 or 85 XJ6. It actually has a later model rack and pinion in it, which is cool. That's the newer version, so that must have been replaced at some point. Upper ball joints look like they've been done. You know, maintenance has been done. I'm not going to rebuild this right now. I'm just throwing it in. I can always rebuild it later. But I have to do some prep work before I can even start on this. So, as I said before, probably on these things, the Jaguars front suspension were bolt-ins. So they have these big outriggers on the front, and they had mounts that went back there in the corners. And I'm not going to be using any of that. I'm welding this in. So I'm going to cut these big horns off. They're going away with the mounts. The back mounts are going to get cleaned off. The engine originally mounted to these pads. I never know if I'm going to be able to use those or not. It depends on where the cross member lies. On my F1 pickups, I've been able to use those pads and make mounts. So all I'm going to do is unbolt the Jaguar mounts that are bolted to them right now, and I'm going to leave the pads for the moment and see where they land. If they're way out of the way and not going to be able to use, I'll cut them off. Because on the 55 Buick, this pad was actually in the way where the AC compressor would be. So that's another thing to check. Other things I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to remove the front sway bar for now. I'm going to remove the power steering lines to get those out of the way. And the biggest thing I have to do is I'm going to have to notch this, because the space between these uprights here usually works good with a frame that's about 32 inches wide. And I'm looking at about 33 and 3/4. So I'm going to have to measure back and notch out some little areas back here so the frame rails will fit in between those uprights. And because the frame rails are a little wide also, I'm going to remove the upper control arms to get them out of the way so the frame can come down and won't bash into these, and I can get this thing lined up for mocking. So that's the motor mounts, front sway bar, power steering hoses. Next I'll buzz off the rear mounts. Yeah, the rear mounts. Buzz those off next. Rear mounts are gone, and the little pieces that are welded to them that run up the side of the towers, you just kind of cut that away a little at a time and then knock it off. I didn't want to blow into that with the plasma. Cut-off wheel will probably be easier, but it's done. Both sides, all set. So next will be the big guys out front. front mounts are off. If you want to spend time, you can actually clean those up to be flush with the cross member. Once it's on the car, you'll never look at it again. So I just clean them up, get them straight so they can be painted up, and that's it. Next thing, we're almost done. Next thing, I have to notch the towers. I need to double check my measurements. I think I need like 33 3/4 for the rails. So I'll find the center line, mark the center line on this, and mark out to the sides, draw a line, figure out where I have to open those up a little bit. Because right now, it's not gonna fit. I think the max between the rear of the towers is around 32.5, but I'll measure it and make sure. Notches are made. I didn't video it, but basically I just put a cut in the back and knocked this over on each side, welded it up, and yeah, so now it's enough room for the 34-inch wide frame rails. I think I'm actually at 33.5, 33 3/4, but I set it to 34 to try to make sure I have enough room. We're almost there. I'm going to remove the front shocks, get those out of the way because I'm not going to use them. Going to be using shorter shocks and making my own mounts for the top. So I got to get those shocks off of there, and then it's time to remove the upper control arms to get those out of the way. All right, shocks are out. Had to take a break because I was getting hungry and I could not concentrate. I hate when that happens. So shocks are out. We are just about ready to roll this underneath. The only thing I had left to do is, as I said 10 times already, I have to remove the upper control arms. So what I plan on doing is I'm not going to disconnect the ball joint side. I'm going to compress the springs, unbolt at the top, and swing the arm up and off the top there just to get clearance. I think that'll work. I made a couple tools here, basically just some threaded rod I welded to some flat pieces of steel, and they run down underneath to the lower control arm where I have a nut on there, and if all works well, I'll tighten the nut, it'll compress the spring, take the tension off the upper control arm, and I can just unbolt it and spin it out of the way. Then I can actually put it in the car, but before I do that, I gotta modify these inner fender wells. You can see my marker lines in there. I gotta cut this open, so make more room for the Jaguar control arms. No big deal. And then maybe we'll just, I'll staple some pieces of blue jeans on there, just like they had, and make it look just like Hudson stuff, if that was Hudson stuff. I think somebody did that. It's kind of silly. All right, I'm going to move that in here and see what happens when I tighten those rods down. If the spring explodes or if it works. Springs are compressed just enough to get the tension off the upper control arms. Only issue I see is this one. This rotated, might be in the way of the frame rail. But as long as I can get it up into the car, and if I can reattach the upper control arm while it's in the car, then I can just undo that and be done with it. So let's see. I think these have been here a long time. All the bolts are out. I removed all the alignment shims and put them on the ground where they should be. These guys lift off like that. A rock, okay. There we go. Time to lower the car down. I don't know if I'll be able to get this on video. As you can tell, the garage is overloaded with junk. It didn't used to always be this way. I don't know what happened. this doesn't work, you'll just have to take my word for it. See where we are. I have to go back a little bit and over my way. And there it is, just sitting there. Believe it or not, I couldn't video because I couldn't get an angle, but everything worked just like planned. Unbelievable. Just lowered the car down, frame rails sitting on top of the Jag crossmember, and then just pulled the upper control arms back into place and bolted them in. So the springs are still compressed. I don't know if it'll be much more than this, much lower than this for ride height. It might come down a little bit more. Just depends on the weight. But, you know, tire's about, maybe 1.5 inches under the fender. So that's acceptable. These Jaguars use plastic shims in the springs, and just taking those out will get a little bit of space. And I don't have the bump stops up very high. You can't see them under there, really, I don't think. But I don't have them way up off of the tower there, so it could go up a little bit more. It could lower some more, but this is acceptable. And if I don't like it, I'll just cut a coil. That's all. It'll be easy. So things are going so far so good. But I think that is it for day 4. Got a lot accomplished, which is good. Just keep pushing forward, and I don't know, I'll have to decide what's going to be next. Obviously, I have to get this welded in, get the frames, rails boxed. So, yeah, those will be the next things to do. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.